So hello everybody, and welcome back. We're going to get deeper into the Lost Isle of Elithis campaign. So with the introduction that I put out a couple of weeks ago, it sort of laid the groundworks of what we're doing, how it's going to run, and the time frame on it. So throughout this video, we'll talk about a couple extra things in advance and some of the events that happened, and then also get into the resolution of the first turn. But also, before we go too far, I think that I recognize that out of the first one that I didn't really describe the end game so well. Now, the Blood in the Badlands asks you to play with the Fosric's Folding Fortress and obtain relics, mainly through interacting with that thing throughout the battle. And then fighting an end game of effectively using your relics to get you into a better position when you play the final battle for Fosric's Folding Fortress. We're going to throw the fortress out of it, but we're going to keep the relic idea in there. So you can still obtain relics through battles, but what we're going to translate it to is, we're going to translate it to what you see here. And these are tokens that are used in the Triumph and Treachery. That is what's going to be our end game down the road here. So as you obtain relics, they'll translate into these little guys. Effectively, every relic will be 50 points worth that you can use into the Triumph and Treachery game. For those that haven't done Triumph and Treachery, what this relates to is that's the currency for winning the battle of the Triumph and Treachery, but it can also be used within that battle to use as points to hire in mercenaries, so extra points to your army. Also, there's a lot of cards that come up in Triumph and Treachery that require you to use cards to do that. So that's wherein lies the advantage, that throughout the campaign, if you obtain more of these, you're in a better standing for the eventual end game that we're going to play out with. It's just a giant Triumph and Treachery game between the six of us. So getting into the first turn, what I want to talk about initially is random events. Now this is a chart from the book, I touched on that last time. So let's let you know how this happened. So the orcs, they rolled up an event where they had an extra 25% of troops for the first battle that they fought. So that's going to come into play immediately. The High Elves rolled an event that let them ruin a mine that was already existing. But unfortunately there wasn't any mines yet, so that was really a no effect thing. Warriors of Chaos rolled a benefit to let them challenge anybody on the field, no matter who they were matched with. The Lizardmen, Yellow Lizardmen, which we'll show you on the map here in a second, found a treasure map which allowed them to start off with 2 relics. So they already got the jump on the rest of us by having something towards the end game already in their pocket. For myself, the Skaven, what I had the opportunity to do was to move a second time. And we'll talk about how armies move in a moment. And then lastly, the other Lizardman player pulled off some event that allowed him to do some dirty geomancy and ruin a fortress right out of the gates. And he chose to ruin mine, unfortunately. So I'm going to use this map to show you how the movement happened throughout the battlefield. Now, each of those 3 flags represented by the color would be reflective of the army units that can actually move around physically on the field. The colored areas and the hexagons, of course, that represents the territory that's controlled by each of those empires. Now, at the start of it, the lowest or smallest empire is the one that's supposed to have initiative to move first. But we actually all started off with 4 tiles. What you're looking at here is sort of the end of the turn, and after movings were done. So maybe what I'll do here is I'll get out my little pointer and I'll show you how armies moved. So first off, the orcs moved into this territory, and then they took a couple of steps to expand like that in those 2 places. Now, of course, that created some conflict with the Warriors of Chaos. So what the Warrior of Chaos guy decided to do was that he left this unit at home, standing still right around the fortress there, and then he moved from here up into that territory to challenge the elves, and then he had another one that stuck out where it was so that he could fight off against these particular orcs. Now what the elves did is, again, they kept 1 unit at home on the fortress. They moved this one from here to there to cut off the Warriors of Chaos, and effectively they ended up trading places. But the other super tricky move is that the elves have the ability to use any coastal region as considered to be adjacent to their territory. So that means that the one that started way over here circumvented two sides of the island and came in there. Very tricky. Now, what that meant for me, let's talk about my moves for a second. So one of my first moves was to step from this area to challenge the Lizardmen capital. I left these guys at home while this flag that currently is there actually moved out to there. But you remember one of my random events was to move a second time. So after these high elves took the jump on me, I returned to home to make that challenge happen. The Lizardmen did a move from there to there. They did a move to there to obtain my territory. While these guys were largely unopposed, that guy moved to that spot and this guy to there, while that guy stayed at home. Maybe I'll talk about this one for just a second. You'll notice that there is one standing off in the sea here. Well, in fact, what happened there was that after I moved to the capital, he moved that one to challenge me. And when we talk about challenges, you're not allowed to challenge somebody that's already challenged. That's already being challenged, I should say. So you do a simple die roll to see how that resolves. And in some cases, instead of being pushed back or repulsed, there is a chance that the unit can become scattered. And so that's what that represents over here, is this guy has become scattered, so is removed from the map, and that guy would be able to return to the map at the end of the season. And because we're doing 2 turns per season, it effectively means, because this is turn 1, he sits this out, sits out the next turn, and then we'll be able to return for the beginning of turn 3. Okay, now let's move on to introduce some of the characters at play here. This is Nicodemus, and that is my Gracier Lord, and he is functionally the guy that operates the business for the Skaven, and he appears in the first battle. So maybe this is a good opportunity to talk about the first battles. So the first of the challenge was over here on this side of the island, where the Orcs stepped onto Warriors of Chaos territory. Now remember, the Orcs had a bonus of 25% for this battle, so they were in pretty good shape. The way that that battle turned out was that it wasn't really a big blowout, despite the fact of the points advantage, but the Orcs did win that one. They held out and redirected and dodged some trolls while Chaos Demon Prince gave them a lot of havoc, but they claimed enough other stuff to claim that victory. The aftermath of the victory and some of the fun things that turn out here is luckily none of the 2 heroes that were involved in the aftermath were removed from the field, so didn't have to roll anything serious. But one of the things that does happen is that you got to roll on a table if you're the winner or the loser. The guy who lost had a big horde of trolls that he faced in that battle, and one of the consequences was that they became a regiment of renown and had stupidity. Now that doesn't mean anything when you're a troll, except for you're double stupid. But for the fact that they're now labeled as a regiment of renown, it means that every time that he fields this particular flag on the field, he's got to have that horde of trolls in there. That's locked in as part of a permanent group. Now over in this battle at the other side of the field, this was the Skaven trying to vanquish the Dark Elves from that territory. We fought an underground battle, and there is rules for the underground battles in that Blood in the Badlands book, if you have a look. So the way that we fought this out is effectively the scenario called for me to do a breakthrough against the elves. So I was sort of bottlenecked in, and I had to either bust through and escape units off the opposite end, or to claim all of the banners that the elves owned in order to sort of break their will, I suppose, and make them run away. Any other result was a victory for the elves. So the way that this battle played out is it was really tough for me early. I had white lions and sea guard in my face and bolt throwers going through all kinds of things. And my Skaven contraptions, which usually look good in the early going, were not looking so good. So despite being diminished and maybe redirecting and chaffing them up a little bit, I was in tough against some white lions, and I eventually had to work around a piece of impassable terrain to get my storm vermin in a rear charge against those white lions who were whittling down a gigantic horde of Skaven clan rats pushing a screaming bell, and won it out by doing that. So victory for the Skaven. The aftermath of that battle is it allowed me to rebuild my fortress that had been ruined earlier. But there were some downsides too, and that is that poor Nicodemus was taken out of the battle, and the result is that he was in a coma. And as far as game turns, what that means is this guy cannot participate in the next battle that he fights. On the elf side as well, he had an injury to his leader. He was taken out of the battle, but not so bad a consequence. He just suffers -1 to his movement for the leg wound for just the next battle. The other upside to that is that this Storm Vermin unit became a regiment to renown as well, and they are permanent fear causers now, so they will cause fear in my enemies. Very exciting. Now, by virtue of the way the challenges work, you have to challenge, first of all, guys that share the same tile as you. So if you have opposing enemies in the same place, that challenge has to happen. So that's why we had the 2 that we covered so far. Now, the other 2, even though the Blue Lizardmen player is on my territory, I'm already challenged, so he couldn't challenge me. And we were on a spot up here where we talked about this guy being pushed out into the sea. But the challenge was already made with the high elf, so he couldn't challenge me there. So that means the 2 lizardmen had a face-off. And this actually resulted in something pretty comical. Now, one of the lizardmen forces was led by Colonel Slanders, this Slan here. The other one was led by Leonardo, the skink chief. The end result of the battle, unfortunately, after a hard-fought one, was that Colonel Slanders and his group won, and Leonardo was captured. So this is a little bit of fun that the guys had afterwards, and did a little bit of a photo bomb of what's happening to poor Leonardo. And this is the kind of good flavor that we were really hoping to generate in the campaign, so kudos to these guys for pulling it off. So the rebuttal to that one, of course, is this little photo where his other 2 heroes, this Saurus Oldblood Tony and the Croxagore Xander, are now plotting the demise of Colonel Slanders. So they fit in another special sidebar scenario to fight out to see if they could recover Leonardo from his capture. Unfortunately, that was not successful. So after that second battle, he created this little reward poster to entice the rest of us to maybe throw in against the Lizardman player that was holding Leonardo captive. So that was, again, kudos to those guys for putting in the extra flavor and the effort to create this. So now let's talk about the end result of how this campaign settled off. Let's go look over here for a second. So you'll see that this territory here, although the orcs won that battle and they shoved the Chaos Warriors back out of it, you do still have to do a die roll after the fact to claim a territory from somebody else. And he failed at doing that. So although he still stands on that territory, he doesn't own it and doesn't turn purple. Okay. You might also notice that the elves are no longer standing down here. Well, they were forced to retreat, and they get sent all the way back to their starting point, which was way back up top there. Okay? And that effectively shows you the territories that are contained and owned at the end of it. Also, for your viewing pleasure, we've plugged in our various hero names and all that, and you can see on this one, I don't know if you can get in tight enough to see, but the guy that made this map for me, David, did a brilliant job. And on each of our flags, he's putting numbers there so we can tell who's what and where throughout the developments of this campaign. So now with one turn in the books, when we look at the settlement of the map, the thing to lead ahead for turn 2 is it's those that have the smallest empire that are going to get the initiative in the next battle. So for example, that is me down here, and also Warriors of Chaos over there. So we'll be seeing who gets the initiative, and that's the person who rolls random events first, who moves first, and who gets the challenge first in the next battle. But moving ahead, I guess to talk about a little bit of forecasting and what's going to come, is we're pulling this out of the Blood in the Badlands again, and this is a group battle. and is a two-tier thing. So the first battle is some random matchups to see who's fighting in the marshes, and the winners of each of those 3 battles between the 6 of us that will go on to play a 3-way battle between those winners. And what they will claim, it's kind of shown off down here. Again, you'll maybe blow this up, but effectively very quickly. There's a special map tile that's set aside for the winner of this. They'll claim that map tile, but also there's a few magic items that are represented there that they'll also be able to claim and permanently keep with their rosters. So there you go, everybody. That's a rundown of turn 1, and turn 2's already been done, so I'll do another video pretty shortly to get you caught up to speed. And I hope you're enjoying how this lays out so far, and stay with us. More fun to ensue.